Thanks, Andy. Can I just reiterate Chris and Andy's comments and welcome you here today. Thanks for spending some time with us, not only for your support during the year. I'm going to try and talk about challenging opportunities, and I'll start off by talking about why we ended up where we ended up now. And we use data, and a lot of people say this, but actually my experience is that they don't use data, and they try and react to things as they happen. We've tried not to do that, and I want to try and demonstrate the reality of that. If you look at housing tenure in the UK, since 1980, then you'll see that home ownership has levelled off and it's still hovering at about 60-odd%. And one of the big issues for a Conservative government is they really don't like the fact on their watch that home ownership's fallen, but there's not a lot they can do about it. And that primarily is behind a lot of their housing policy. But more importantly, the amount of social housing and market renting has significantly shifted. And for the first time, there's more private renting than there is social housing in the UK. And our prognosis at the time, when we looked at it, a difficult world, I call this my bad haircut slide. The reality is it's a very, very, very turbulent world out there. It's not just the Brexit problems. The international situation is pretty fraught. People are talking about a new Cold War, for God's sake. I mean, this is a very, very, very difficult world view, and who really knows what's happening? And anybody who does know what's happening, I wish they'd give me a call, because I don't think they exist. So we're trying to deal with high levels of geopolitical and economic uncertainty within an envelope of our own domestic uncertainty, and it's pretty tough. So really the issue is about understanding those risks, and we are very, very, very risk aware. So when we started our strategy in 1999, we took a bet that home ownership would continue to fall, and we took a bet that social housing would continue to decline and that market renting would increase, and that's exactly what's happened. And that's what drove our diversification. That and some on-the-ground experience with communities who were finding that because there wasn't tenure diversity at the local level, the people who were ambitious, who were smart, who got a bit lucky in life, whatever they might be, they were moving away. So those neighbourhoods were getting more and more concentrated with poorer people. And that didn't strike us to be, one, a good societal outcome, and it wasn't good business either. So we got into mixed tenure because we wanted those communities to be more self-sustaining. And we started building houses for sale, not because we thought it was necessarily a brilliant idea, but we wanted to create a new place that was stable. We did our first generation scheme in Newcastle. I remember very well talking to the local priest. And I said, how's business? He said, well, it's not great. He said, but it's Christmas. The churches are heaving. And what's so special about Christmas? He said, everybody comes home. So all the children who have done well in this neighbourhood had all moved. And so the concentration of deprivation just got worse and worse and worse. And it occurred to me, not only was that not a good idea, but we could do something about it. So we then started getting into mixed tenure communities in 1999. It was perceived to be the work of the devil at the time, but now everybody does it because it's common sense. And that's an example about a risk that we identified from a combination of the data and our frontline operational experience that led us to deliver a different proposition. We also aren't very keen on investing in land. So we primarily drive lots of joint venture activity, and Mary's described it really, really well, and we access land without paying for it. Seems to be sensible to me. The first time it happens in a housing downturn, you end up with big impairments, and that's what happened to the house builders in 2007-8. We've actively, aggressively maintained development programs without overexposure to land activities. I'm not going to go too much through the political risks. We all know what they are. Our view is about, well, what can we do about that? So we're very focused on how can we make a difference, how do we be relevant to people, and how do we deal with the difficulty? So the reality is we operate, this is our operating model. In a downturn, Andy's already talked about it, we start flipping tenancies into more attractive areas. The Homes England proposition for us is very, very helpful because it augments an existing operating model. So our ability to move from for sale or market rent into affordable or social, we've been doing for years. We have a well-worn process of doing it. And if the market then takes off, we're very nimble about then selling properties. So we're not in love with our assets. You'll never hear us bang on about how many properties we've got, because the reality is it shifts depending on the economy. So if we do a lot of housing for sale and the market moves against us, we just tack away into a different tenancy. I'm making it sound glib and easy. It's not. But we have that capability, and more importantly, a mindset to do that. So you'll find that although we have a business plan to do X, if the market moves against us, we'll quickly change that to something more sensible, because we have a mixed tenure mindset anyway, and we have the capability with all of our operating companies to do that. And we also have all the management capability to deal with any tenure. So that's a big issue for us. As we constantly go through this turbulence, the ability to tack and deal with the financial risk in a way that works, and where we can also maintain levels of development, because we know that we can move it into other types of tenure. And I'll say again, the Homes England thing, we've been lobbying for that sort of flexibility for years. So being able to do it now with a combination of grant for social housing and funding flexibilities, Frank, it was designed for us. It's absolutely brilliant. So being one of the Homes England 8 strategic partners was just absolutely the right thing to do, and works really well for us. And we are now developing some thinking to build on that. How can we find ways of leverage government finance to produce more housing without them having to produce more grant necessarily? So we've got a deal with the Scottish Government, the Mid-Market Rent Fund, part of our fund management business, where the government, the first time we've been able to persuade government to put £50 million, 49.7, rounding error, into a fund, we then find the leverage to build 1,000 mid-market homes, which in English is affordable housing. It's 20% shy of the market. That's groundbreaking. And if we can do that sort of thing elsewhere, it makes complete sense. So we're able to be innovative, we're able to be risk aware, we're able to tack very quickly with the prevailing markets, and we're able to do all of this because we have so many operating companies, and those skills really combine. In that video I made the point about our ability to put our operating companies together to create new things is amazing. There's no doubt that we won Surrey because of our ability to do what other people can't do. And it amazes me that other people aren't doing this, because it seems to us screamingly obvious that this is the thing to do. So we're going to exploit the fact we're in the market first as quickly as we can. So we ended up with a discussion about, well, what were we in business for? And we were in business to try and be relevant to people, understand in detail the data about markets, and try and find ways to have as many possible outcomes so that we were able, in the event that the market moved against us, to move stock into different propositions, all of which worked financially. So those things mutually supported each other, and now we do everything from affordable rent, build to rent, private rent, all the way through, as one of my colleagues, I think it was Colin, said about custom build. The idea here is we're going to work with people on a pilot scheme, 122 properties, where they can choose from 20 pre-agreed, planning approved plots on each site. And it's at the same sort of housing pricing than you would be doing from a major house builder. If we can make this work and commoditize it, why would you ever buy a house builder product ever again? Because if you look at the TV, not that I do it much, you're assailed by programs about how to build your own house. And there's always someone in there building out of old bottle tops or dead badges or whatever. And it's captured the public mood. And yet, where is the shop where I go to buy that? There isn't one. And we've spotted that gap in the market by data analysis and market assessment. And rather than rush into it, which is what people do, we're going to try and pilot it. If it doesn't work, we've lost nothing. If it works, we've created a new model for the housing market. It's worth a shot in a very risk-aware way that makes a lot of sense. And that's our approach. Data, market gaps, try it first, and we're doing the same with modular housing. Everybody and his Uncle Frank wants to do modular housing now, but I've not seen it succeed anyway. So what we decided to do was find somebody very small that we would joint venture with and then we would get to the point where they could design the modular properties we wanted. Not that we'd have to buy what other people produce, which is currently the market. That's one of the reasons it's not taking up and getting to scale that it needs to work. So we're on with that. We've tried it on site. It really works. It's very popular with people, and the economics works. So now we're going to do a bit more work to get the economics to work better, and then we'll have something. And we don't shout about this because we only talk about what we've done. We won't make announcements about we're thinking about this and we're thinking about that. We need to trial it, test it, and if we fail, I'd like us to fail pretty small, really. And that works as an operating model. That's what we do. So we can be innovative and be risk-aware at the same time, it strikes me. And the danger is people are so risk-aware they don't do anything. And we have to find a middle position. So that process of constant learning and innovating has led us to be active in these areas. And the real crucial thing isn't that we're active in these areas, but the ability to bring them together and do big schemes that other people can't do at the moment is a market leader. Nobody else seems to be able or want to do it, which is amazing. So the likes of Surrey and other local authorities who are well publicised in terms of their difficulties, we will say, how can we help you turn your assets into revenue-producing assets, which is what their problem is. It's pointless them having a lot of capital because their childcare services and elderly care, they need revenue. So our pitch is not to try and take their stock off them, it's to work with them to actually release revenue-producing assets from the assets they hold. And that's getting a lot of traction, and it makes sense, and it's de-risking the situation for both of us, and it's creating a workflow that other people aren't tackling. So that's the big issue for me. And then as we go through this, we then develop the capability, because it's all great to talk about this, but have you got the capability to deliver on it? So now slowly, and we've been doing this for 20 years, it isn't something we decided to do last Friday, we now have the capability from urban planning all the way through to fund management and portfolio management, all the capabilities to do everything. And we've just created our own commercial property company because from experience, actually, it was quite hard to get a good service. And given the sort of mixed income and mixed use developments we do, the ability to have the capability to manage the whole lot is very attractive. So you don't have to speak to 5 or 6 different management companies. You only just speak to us, and we do the lot. And it also makes a much more seamless service to the individual customer. And the reason we did that is we watched how people were doing very attractive mixed-use developments, often in mid or high-rise. They were really well designed. They looked beautiful, but they were managed by 60 possible landlords, and the place was a shambles in about 18 months. And that's not a good way of protecting value. So it was driven by commerciality, that we wanted to protect value, and therefore we wanted to take complete responsibility for the management of the block. And it's worked. So you can see a transition from 20 years ago when we nobly dealt with affordable housing, and we still do. We still do. We provide all sorts of services. We manage Westminster's homelessness service on a contract. We're very active in these spaces, but we do it in a commercial way. But it creates all sorts of social outcomes. And we moved all of our, I won't bore you with all this, but the big one at the top is additionality. Having achieved all of this, and you've seen lots of examples of the reality of making a difference on the ground, the next issue is how could we do more of it in a risk-aware way? And Homes England is part of the answer to that. Being a fund manager was another part of that. And another part of that was managing our assets in a much more commercial way, which we do now. So you'll see that we will divest of ourselves of some assets and we'll acquire assets in a very commercial way. And that together creates the additionality to do more of the good work that we do. I just want to pick on 2 areas that weren't in the video that I think are worth talking about. When you look at the deep data, and everybody talks about this now, the retirement market is massive and getting bigger. When you take that fact with the data that for the first time last year, the number of people who've paid their mortgage is now greater than the people who've got a mortgage, you can see where the housing wealth is, and that's likely to increase. Now, if we want to help people move through the housing market, why aren't they doing that? Well, there's a host of reasons, but principally because they can't find something they would want to move to. So we decided to get into the retirement market, but we were already in it. We were already in it in the affordable side. We weren't in it in the market renting side, and we weren't in it in the for sale side. So we decided to create BREA, our retirement arm, and we already managed 5,000 homes for elderly people. We got that, and we did something we do a lot of. We looked at the whole market. So what was the retirement market like? And could we get into what we really like? Our sweet spot is the mid-market. Why? Because it's the biggest and the deepest. Most people fight about the top and the bottom of the market. We don't. We try and find the mass market. And so we create an end-to-end offer, and we did that. So we weren't in the for sale bit. And what's really interesting, when we started doing the for sale bit, we started to realise from interactions with people, actually they were quite interested in other tenures. They didn't mind market rent. There might be a shared ownership play. So we then were back into our risk awareness model again. So that one in the middle is Stonewalled. Who wouldn't want to live there? And we're going to be in that space again, gradually, slowly building it, learning how to do it, and then once we commoditize it and we're good at it, then we go. And another area that's very, very interesting, and we've always done this, we have a business called Living Plus. It does forms of assisted housing, and it does forms of housing for elderly people. If you're interested in this, the reality is when you look at the government's rent policy, the one bit nobody touches is this. And that's why there's a lot of interest now from REITs and others in investing in this. So we decided we would use our capability and we would expand it. So now we have a deep pipeline of these schemes. The logic is then to create a funding vehicle for that. And it makes a massive difference. We have a very deep skill in care and supported housing, not providing care, but care in an environment. And the other thing we spotted was a market gap for charities who were very actually financially robust, but they didn't have a real estate arm. So they didn't have any properties. So we set up a real estate arm for charities, and now we bought properties for individual local charities, and we manage all of the real estate bit, and they do the bit they're good at, which is the care, and it's worked spectacularly well. It really, really, really yields really well. It's a really good service, and nobody else had spotted it. So we're constantly using data and market analysis and experience to find new ways of delivering services. And we wouldn't be what we are without being deeply concerned about making a difference to society. It's a big issue. That's why most of us work here. We make a big difference. But nobody wants to work with a skinned philanthropist. So we need very, very commercial approaches in order to make this level of difference. Pat's talked about some of these numbers already. But as a business, if people talk to us about what our health and well-being strategy is, I normally tell them that we teach 75,000 kids to swim every week. What do? And so it's a really powerful process. But the interesting thing, commercially, it washes its face. And most importantly, it completely changed our relationship with local government. They all love leisure. And so we now have a relationship and a platform with local government that nobody else has got, from the regeneration and housing side as well. That synergy is obvious, and it surprised me how good it was, actually. So even making a difference to society works if you do it cleverly and you manage it commercially, in my view. We also, everybody has to be an award winner these days. We are a very active award winner. We've won all sorts of stuff. Some of them are there, and we keep winning awards. And the ones that are really interesting are the ones that you don't bid for and the industry recommends you for. They're the ones I watch, and every year we get recommended for them. So we've obviously got a good reputation, and we need to be mindful of keeping that reputation by continuing to perform. So what are we about as a business then? We're about using data, we're about understanding the market, we're about risk-based innovation, and we're also about deeply believing in commercial outcomes, for commercial methods to deliver social outcomes. And all the evidence is that we're continuing to do that. We are deeply committed to the idea of place. We're called Place for People for a very good reason. And we've come up with a whole raft of ways of doing that, and it's getting a lot of traction in the market. We think the local government market is a huge market. We genuinely want to work with people to achieve their outcomes, and we think that's getting a lot of traction. We're very committed to mixed use, mixed tenure places because they work, and we're very keen to maintain a range of services and products to people. And that end-to-end supply chain has been very, very successful. And we run our business not as one behemoth, but as lots and lots of businesses that are very focused, they're very clear in their market, but they have the capability and the desire to come together in combinations when required. And that really works. It really works. It was our original plan. It's taken us 20 years to get there, but it really, really works. And we're deeply committed. I go on about this all the time. We're very, very self-critical, and we must always improve on what we do. So I use this thing called improvement on previous best. Nobody's saying you're not great. We're all great, but what can we do to be better? And organizations sometimes get improvement fatigue. So, they were already doing really well. Why are you hassling us to do any better? It's pretty good now. But improvement on previous best, everybody gets. You can always be better. You can always do something different. You can always make a difference to society. And you can always personally improve. So we've continued our journey. We've continued to invent our future. And we are deeply committed to that future. And I want to thank you for your support and commitment in helping us invent that future. Thank you.